Mr. B's, Mr. B's, Mr. B's history. Now then, people, today we are going to look at hospitals. And we're going to look at hospitals from roughly the year 1000 all the way through to the present day. But unusually, we're going to do this through the lens of only one hospital. That is St Barts Hospital, St Bartholomew's Hospital in London. So let's get going. Much as I would like to claim omnipotent knowledge about Barts Hospital, what I have to be honest with is all of these bits of information are taken from a most brilliant lecture from the Gresham College by Professor Charles Knight, who is the senior executive, I believe, of Barts Hospital, and he gave a lecture about the history of that establishment. I recommend all people to look at Gresham College lectures. They are free, they are online, they often have copies of the transcripts and the PowerPoint presentations, and they are on all topics, not just history, though the history ones are fab. So thank you, Gresham College. Thank you for Professor Charles Knight. I've just pinched it. Thank you. So perhaps the main thing about hospitals in the medieval period was their focus on a religious aspect. So here's a picture of the founder, not a contemporary picture, but a later engraving of Rahare, who was often referred to as a court jester at the court of Henry I. But when he was on pilgrimage and he felt particularly ill, he vowed that if he survived, when he got back to England, he would set up a hospital. And it's called St Bartholomew's Hospital because whilst he was recovering on his return journey, he had a vision of St Bartholomew, who told him where to build the hospital in Smoothfield, so on the south side of London. How St Bartholomew had a detailed knowledge of London real estate, I do not know, but anyway, that's what happened. And so in 1123, Rahare founded St Barts Hospital. So the first period of time that AQA looks at is medicine standing still, essentially the medieval period. And so what can we find out about hospitals in general when we look at St Barts in the medieval period? Well, there were 8 brethren, essentially monks and sisters of the priory. In the early years, it was more likely that people got well because of rest, good food, relatively clean conditions rather than medical treatment. Many of the cures are religious based, so praying to St Bartholomew himself. There are some more bizarre practices recorded in the logbooks of St Barts Hospital. One of them is a treatment for, I'm not sure which particular condition, but you need to boil dead puppies and allow the patient to bathe in the water, which I'm sure would have solved many issues. Not. But importantly, despite the focus on rest, despite the focus on food and religious prayer and some weird cures, there is no record of any surgery taking place at St Barts during the medieval period. So rest, religion, no surgery. Almost all of the hospitals in medieval England were originally founded through or as a result of monasteries and other religious organisations. So when Henry VIII dissolves the monasteries in the middle of the 16th century, this causes many problems for many hospitals. In fact, before the Reformation, there were over 150 hospitals in Yorkshire alone. Many of them, the vast majority of them, perhaps almost all of them, closed as a result of the Reformation, as Henry wanted to get his hands on the land and therefore later on the money. However, Barts was one of those few hospitals which managed to survive by converting from a monastic organisation to an organisation run by the local town council. So thank you, City of London. You also get beginnings of change when surgery is clearly taking part. So from the mid 16th century onwards, there are at least 3 surgeons mentioned. There's the beginnings of specialisation. You have bone setters and people who cut out tumours. And in 1547, there is the first record of surgery taking place, of an operation taking place at St Barts, where the surgeon Martin is paid 10 shillings, quite a lot of money, for removing a bladder stone. Here is a sort of contemporary picture of the operation. It's a bit grim. Don't look too carefully. Thank you. Let's move on. Okay, St Barts is also famous for having William Harvey, the famous discoverer of the circulation of the blood, as its chief physician for a significant part of the 17th century. And William Harvey laid down various rules for the operations, for the operation of the hospital rather than operations particularly. Interestingly, he only wanted to accept curable patients. Surgeons must not admit patients they do not want to treat. They must confer with the physician, William Harvey. So William Harvey in Barts Hospital is at the very centre of everything. When you admitted to St Barts when William Harvey was there, you had to go into the Great Hall, where he would look at you and decide what was wrong with you and decide what the treatment would be. If by chance you were then cured, when you're about to be discharged, you praised God and were given money, clothes and a passport to say that you were fit and healthy. So William Harvey, a towering figure of 17th century medicine and a towering domineering figure of Barts as well. Okay, this fact from the brilliant Gresham College lecture may be my very favourite bit. I love a weird fact. Okay, what many of you would have come across this idea that apart from, if you like, official medicine and medical institutions such as St Barts, there were lots of people who were pretending to offer various cures, and these people were known as quacks. One of the most famous of these quacks, often called the king of quacks, was someone called William Salmon, and he used to loiter outside the gates of St Barts Hospital selling his cures. One was an elixir of life, but my personal favourite was his anti-nymphomaniac lemonade, which he sold to passers-by who were in need of such treatment. Right, let's move on now to the third phase that AQA separates the history of medicine into, and that's a revolution in medicine, the 19th century. And here I think Barts is a really brilliant example of the changes. So you get increasing specialisation. They have an official medical school, they set up a school of nursing, and by the end of the 19th century they were one of the first hospitals in Britain, if not Europe, to use x-rays to look at skeletal issues. My favourite change is comparing what life in Barts might have been like at the beginning of the 19th century with that at the end. So in 1819 they were still using leeches for bleeding, I'm assuming, and in 1819 they used over 93,000 leeches. So that's the beginning of the 19th century. When we get to the end of the 19th century, there's over or nearly 2,500 operations by 1899, which had increased from 417 in 1863. So you can see the impact of anaesthetic. You can see the impact of, if you like, carbolic acid. Mortality is halved and hospitals are becoming more recognisably modern. So that's a brilliant contrast from leeches to modern operations in less than 100 years. Okay, so the fourth aspect of the AQA medicine syllabus is this idea about the 20th century, and it's about health of the people. And of course, the big thing about 20th century is the introduction of the NHS, where everybody can get free medical treatment at the point of need. But before that, Barts takes on a much more modern approach. Okay, there's 5 new operating theatres built in the 20th century, so they highlighted again the trend towards more surgical intervention and operations. They start to use radiotherapy for cancer treatments, something which continues to this day. Increasingly specialised provision, so they start at Barts, probably the first in England again, for the first effective treatment for dyslexia. And then in 1948, Barts becomes part of the National Health Service, so its control moves away from London City Council, and all those things that you see in every other hospital about use of antibiotics, access for all, comes to fruition. So there you are. A quick trip through 1,000 years of hospitals in England through the lens of Barts Hospital in London. Thank you, Gresham College. Thank you, Barts Hospital. I hope you found that useful. Right, people, I hope you found this little presentation useful about hospitals. If you want to make any comments or if you have any suggestions or ideas, either drop a comment below or send me an email at mrbshistory1832@gmail.com. Thank you and good luck.